Hello everyone, and this is the Fire Emblem Viability tier list. You know, a lot of people recently have been talking about viability in Fire Emblem, like, oh, what makes a unit good? Oh, this is what they were talking about, right? Okay, so what is this? I'm going to rank how fun or interesting it is to play each game viably. You know, so what does that mean? Well, let's get an example of a game that would go in Donald tier. Why is the tier a Donald quote? Because Donald is unviable. Get your facts straight. Okay, so Sacred Stones is a game. You know, I'm gonna go in chronological order usually, but I'm just gonna pick on Sacred Stones first. It's not very interesting to play viably, I'd say, because you just get Seth. Chapter 1, Seth kills everything. It's not even a very hard game in the first place. So, you know, if you just use Seth, use the good units, you know, there's really not too much to think about, and I wouldn't really say it's that intriguing to watch. So that is a viability tier list. And with that, like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you see. Especially subscribe because I'm going to be posting something very, very cool on Sunday that you'll probably want to see. And yeah, this tier list will be very, subjective, I'd say, but I don't know, this is just a stupid idea I had because everyone's talking about unit viability. What if I made a viability tier list? Alright, so now let's actually start it off. And of course, the top tier is Sigurd because Sigurd is Sigurd, and he certainly is a unit in Fire Emblem. Anyway, and I think this is interesting to analyze because, like, this isn't just going to be, oh, it's my favorite Fire Emblem games tier list again, because I think some games actually become more interesting if you view them under the viable, you know, LTC, 0%, oh, I'm going to use the best units and use the best strategies lens than you would just, you know, just, oh, I like Binding Blade because it is the way it is. So, yeah. So actually, the first major difference in the games I like tier list will be Shadow Dragon. Now, I think Shadow Dragon is a pretty fun game to actually speed run on the easiest difficulty because Marth just solos everything, so you just warp him through the game and then you can beat it in under like 20 minutes, which I have done. But yeah, like, I think I'm going to be grading most of these, like, hardest difficulty, like, maybe not strictly, you know, lowest turn count, but you're trying to do, you know, not turtling, using good units, etc., etc. And with Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, if you're playing, like, efficiently, it's just, oh, warp staff, okay, you're done now. You know, because you get, like, let's see, I think it's, like, 7 each, so you get 21 by default, and then you get the hammer, and so you pretty much have infinite. So the very second you unlock Lena, game's dead, pretty much. And Sita, too. Like, you get Sita, and you get Forging. So, like, you get Lena and you get Forging within a very close time span of each other. So it's just like, okay, the game's done. You forged the Wing Spear, you beat the game, good job, kid. You know, like, 2-second gap. So, like, it can be fun to watch on, like, 0%, but even on 0%, you, like, just, oh, you forged State of the Wing Spear, and, you know, that's that. You know, it's like, I'd say it's fun, you know, if you're trying to get into viable Fire Emblem, I'd say it's a good place to start because of how simple it is, and, you know, compared to other games I'll be ranking, right, like, you know, there's really not much going on. It's just like a numbers game, essentially. Oh, do you have the weapon rank to do this? Do you have the forge might to do this? Compared to, you know, games where I'll be ranking later, you know, like this, where it's like, oh, okay, now this is happening, and blah, 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 oh, this skill does this, and oh, this interaction's weird. So, yeah, I like Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon a lot. It's one of my favorites, but if you're playing it at the tippy top level, I'd say it because instead of doing something like specific, like something else, like, I don't know, oh, I'm gonna kill all the bosses with Dark Mage Caesar, because that's funny, you know, it becomes pretty uninteresting real quick, I'd say. And I just realized I forgot to explain this tier. So this is the IDK Who Cares tier, which is a bunch of spin-offs and a bunch of games I've never seen or, you know, played viably. You know, like Revelation, Birthright, I've never watched a video of anyone doing these, like, oh, it's the 0% LTC, and I'm not going to start, and I'm not going to do it myself because I hate these games. Gaiden, I've never seen anyone play or have played it in general, so if I gave an opinion on this, it'd be completely clueless. This is a spin-off, this is a spin-off, this is a spin-off, this game literally is remade twice on the list. I literally just talked about it, and it still has the warp staff, so it's mostly the same. And this is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. So yeah, Shadow Dragon, like, it can be fun to do in, like, some efficient context, like speedrunning the game, and just, like, the fact you can just beat it in, like, 20 minutes is just really, really fun. You know, speedrunning other Fire Emblem games is going to take, like, 2 hours at least, unless it's, like, 3 houses, Crimson Wildfire. But if you're playing efficient in like the context of a speedrun, it can get pretty fun. Because it's not taking like 2 hours of your time. And this, I'm gonna also put in meh tier. Because it's still just a numbers game, right? You know, you just have your stats and that's it. That's all there is to a unit. And, like, I will say, I'm putting it above Shadow Dragon because the opportunities that arise on Lunatic Reverse for, like, efficiency are very interesting, right? So, you know, the LTC of this chapter is involving Katarina, and because you're playing on Lunatic Reverse, Medius actually attacks you first, so then you can survive his second attack because he attacks you, and then Katarina Nosferatus him with a crit, of course, because it's efficient, you're going to be rigging your crits. And that is pretty good, and that's a pretty fun thing to do. And, you know, it's not just the Warp Staff game, because on Lunatic and Lunatic Reverse, there is no the Warp Staff, so you actually have to try and do things, but still, it is still just a numbers game. You know, there's really not there's not too much other factors to consider. You know, you get your speed, you know, you get your poly, you get the stat boosters, and that's that. So yeah, that's another game that on my Fire Emblem in general tier list I like more. When I'm just playing it my way instead of playing it efficiently. Yeah. And then we have this, like, oh, I have Gaiden, but in the who cares tier because I never played it. But I think this game actually has some interesting differences, because I have actually, you know, done a little 0% and discussed it before, but I'm still going to put it below Shadow Dragon, because you still get the warp stuff and you still beat the game. But there are some things that make it interesting, like, oh, there's dismounting indoors, which make it, like, different enough from Shadow Dragon and New Mystery, but it's still, like, you know, like, if you gave Paula all your stat boosters, her only difference indoors is, like, a minor stat reduction. Less movement, but you still gave her all your stat boosters. So it's like, you're still gonna be doing the Paula thing. And there are some interesting things on like 0%, like, oh, Mathis has exactly 21 HP, and the dragons deal 20 true damage, and he has more weapon level than your starter cap, so you can use the Worm Slayer, which means Mathis on 0% is technically better than Luke, Roderick, and Cecilia. So, hooray! Hooray! Mathis viability! But still, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the most interesting thing to ever exist. And that's pretty much the Arcanea saga in terms of viability. Now, if you're just playing through them casually, they're fun. They're really fun games. But if you're like looking for complex depth to a game and like a fun run to watch, I will say watching New Mystery is really fun because, again, another reason it's better than Shadow Dragon in my opinion is like in Shadow Dragon you just forge up the Rider's Bane, boom, done, okay, you beat the game. In this, it's like, okay, the enemies are actually powerful, so it's like, okay, I have to reclass to a Swordmaster for this one specific chapter, because it gives me speed, oh, but then I needed to be a warrior, oh, but if you have Sirius be a horseman, he can get 30 speed, and it's like, oh, so there is actually something going on with the classes more, which makes it a little more thing compared to Shadow Dragon, but still, it's pretty much just a numbers game, which doesn't leave room anything for open, like, ooh, I just watched this LTC Uber do something crazy, and yeah. And honestly, when I tried to LTC it on like Maniac a couple years ago, I didn't really find it that fun. And then we have Genealogy of the Holy War, which, if you're going for AAA rank, I would put it like up here, or SSS. I forgot if it caps at A or at S, where it's like, okay, I need to get every unit the EXP. Oh, so I'll use this staff on this turn, and this needs to be this, and blah. Okay, so you need the Paragon, this, and this, and this, and this. So, you know, and oh, I need to manage my economy for all my units. So, like, if we're talking SSS run, boom, easy, because that is interesting how you get the EXP and then they die, and then it's spread across the 2 generations, but that's not really the criteria I'm grading them by. So it's going down here, because, you know, if you're just playing efficiently, and you're trying to just beat the game, low turns, you just kind of move Sigurd forward, you get him to rings, and then you give the rings to Seliph, and then you promote Seliph, and then yeah, you know, it's like, you know, on an AAA run, you know, you need to make sure, you know, Arya gets her EXP, and she has the Paragon Band for a time, oh, but the Bargain Band and all the Thieves, and oh, this unit needs this, and this, but if you're just playing it on Blitzkrieg, and Blitzkrieg is what, like, the term Shadows of Valentia uses to, like, define you beating the game in under 500 turns, which you might need for genealogy. But yeah, because the big maps, but I doubt it, honestly. But yeah, if we're talking SSS, because those SSS runs, those are fun to watch. Those are fun to experience because of all the management that goes on. But if you're just doing standard Blitzkrieg, I would just, like, put it there. Because, oh, you give Sigurd the rings, you give Self the rings, okay, you beat the game, good job. But, yeah, like... So yeah, this is the Paradox game. It simultaneously exists in two places at once. But by the criteria I'm judging by all the other games, it's just not that particularly what I would call intriguing. Because, like, you're abandoning, like, the unique mechanics. Like, sure, you'll still do, like, inheritance, and if you're doing, like, a thing, alright, you could just have units stand next to each other and get their kids, but, like, doesn't really matter who you pair, like, Larse with in, like, a run, where you're just trying to Blitzkrieg, because you're not going to use Larse or Ulster or Sakath or whatever they call them at all. So it kind of forsakes the unique mechanics of genealogy just a little bit. And yeah, I'm just not that into it. Unless it's A, then it's up here. So yeah, ironically, the game with Sigurd, best viable unit, is not going in real Sigurd tier. Very sad, very sad, very sad. Now, a game that is going in real Sigurd tier is a game that passively mentions it, which in my opinion is Fire Emblem Thracia 776. And this game is so fun to just try to abuse and beat in one turn and, like, do stuff like that. Because you get the Warp Staff, right? Oh, but it's not like Lena where, like, Safi can use it right away. So if you're trying to get, like, a low turn count, it's like, okay, how can I get Safi enough staff rank and this many maps without fatiguing her? Because Thracia has fatigue, ladies and gents. So it's not like, oh, you can just use the one Warper or the two because you warp Seda and then you warp Marth. But it's like, okay, because the Warp Staff uses a ton of fatigue, and these chicks are never getting above, like, 20 HP. So that's interesting. And then also the fact that, like, the ones you get at the beginning don't start with Warp, which is also interesting. And, like, the viable units are very fun to use. You got your Finn, Brave Lance, right away, boom. You got your Ocean, Brave Lance, right away. Boom, you got your Dagdar. Can capture any guy with his, high build and his high, what is that skill called? Accost. So that is just very, very fun. You got a lot of freedom, and it's very fun to watch too, because there's not just a maps you can just, like, snap. There's a lot of maps where you just can't snap your fingers and finish it. Like, oh, there's the chapter where you're defending castle, so on and so forth. And, oh, ballisticians are going to spawn. These guys are going to unlock it and unleash prisoners in your prison. Oh, there's the Reinhardt. Reinhardt you can cheese with one turn. Well, two, because you need to get Cius to bugger off, and then you need to Warp Leaf in, but still. And then there's, like, oh, you want to get Sed, you have to wait one turn even after you warp in, so you gotta make sure your unit can survive. Oh, there's this escape map where you have to, where you just kill the boss and all your units start escaping, and then you gotta go into the city you gotta defend. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. But it's still like, oh, you can't just warp there, you still gotta escape there. So now how do you make use of, okay. So now you can just get to the escape point, but these units have items you might want to capture and you might want to get. So, okay. So seeing people make use of all that is fun. How they manage their weapon ranks. Because it's like, oh, what if I need this unit to get this chapter? Because this was kind of the first one with weapon ranks, right? And it introduced rescuing. So it's like, okay, what if I don't want to use a Warp Staff to beat the game? Okay, I can still get pretty fast if I, use Karen to drag Leaf over here. And again, another map that just stops you from, like, one turning it is, if you want to do, like, viability 100%, I just skip it nowadays. But now you gotta, escort the kids in the chapter with Raedric to get the staff. So it's like, okay, so I'm doing that. What unit is best for this? Okay, and then you also got to deal with all the Lapterian mages in the right room who are using all the staves. So yeah, even though this game has the Warp Staff and there are definitely games you can just, and there are definitely maps you can just warp cheese, that's not really all you have to do, because you still got to get stuff, you still got to do things, right? And just seeing it in motion is very fun, because you just got so many fun tools in Thracia. You got the Rewarp Staff, so you can teleport your own guys around. And it's, again, the game that introduced rescuing, a very fun mechanic for playing fast. And then you also got the indoor maps too, but I'd say it actually makes somewhat of a difference because, oh, Finn uses lances outside, he can't use them indoors, so you actually have to switch up your units a bit compared to, like, you know, Mystery of the Emblem, where it's like, okay, only Doga could, like, use lances indoors anyway, and you're not going to use him anyway, and it's not really a thing because weapon level is universal. So Thracia, I'd say, is a very interesting game to see be played viably. I like doing maps sometimes myself, and it's just very interesting because you got fatigue, you got so many mechanics, you know, intersecting together. Oh, I got to steal this off of this unit. Oh, I got to capture this unit to get this because I need this item like 20 chapters from now. Like, if you're doing like efficient 100%, dude, people can plan so far in advance. Like, oh, I need to get the sleep edge off of the unit with the that comes with the guy you recruit by having what's her name? Miranda Cosgrove, that lady that wants to marry Leaf, you know, her retainer you fight in like Route A. And it's like, okay, one of his guys has a sleep sword. Oh, but then to get Night Guy, who's hard to recruit, you guys know who I'm talking about, Xavier. Oh, I need to get the sleep edge from that guy. Oh, but he's on a horse, so I actually need the sleep staff that I stole from this guy a couple chapters ago. You know, efficiently, if you're playing like efficiently, who cares about recruits? You would just not do that. But like all recruits, it's, you know, you have to plan so far in advance, and you have to get these specific items, and they have limited usage, and you get the hammer right away, but you only have 3 uses of it. So, ooh, what items are you going to use it on? There's so many good items, probably the warp staff, but let's, you know, there are things to do. So Thracia is so complex in its systems and has so many items that are interesting that it really is just a treat to see it be played perfectly and to sometimes go for strats like that yourself. Because even if you want to complete some hard objectives in the game, you know, just get Xavier, you do have to do a bit of, you know, advanced planning and like quick play to make sure you do this before the enemies do that. So like, it is Thracia, very good, lots of interesting things about it. And playing and seeing it played at a high level is very, very fun. And then we got Binding Blade. And I think I'm also going to put it up here. Because it still has that rescue stuff. And it has very fun, viable units. Which, you know, it's is also a thing I said about Thracia. Oh, I have Finn, I'm the Brave Lance. Oh, I'm Ocean, I have the Brave Axe. Oh, I'm Dagnar. Very fun stuff. Compared to, like, Sigurd, you know, and these guys where it's like, oh, it's kind of basic. Oh, I'm Sigurd, I'm moving forward. Like, Sigurd's fun to use because he's powerful. There's not much to him, you know, and this, it's like, you know, you get Paula, and she's Paula, but, yeah, you know, it's not like she has a fun perf or anything, and I think, you know, with Binding Blade, it's very fun, too, because one of the best units in this game is Rutger, and he's just a Myrmidon. It has a high crit rate, but he just dodges everything, and it's so much fun to do compared to, like, other viable units. I'd say because of the flair and the flash of it. Ooh, again, this is a subjective tier list, ladies and gentlemen. Don't put a knife to my throat because I think Binding Blade is more fun to play viably than, you know, New Mystery of the Emblem. In the end, this is just my opinion. And, yeah. So, it's like, oh, so I can do this, and you get the warp staff pretty late into the game. So you kind of do have to even finagle around with it. It has rescue skipping, and that's fun to do. Like, oh, what if I have Shauna carry Rick over to this other side of the village, and you know, that map where you get Echidna? It's like, oh, I do this, this, and this, and there are still steps to it, which is really fun. Because, you know, how do I get Roy's butt to the throne in so and so many turns? And the game actually encourages this, which is something Thracia did too, I forgot to mention, but I think Binding Blade does it more often. It's like, oh, to get the guy in chapter, you have to do this in so and so many turns. So if you want to get the best outcome, the game actually encourages you to get your butt moving, you know, compared to if you're turtling. Because if you're on chapter 21 per se, you can totally just wait out these reinforcements, you know, just put Gonzalez on the mountain, blip, okay. But then by the time you do that, oh, then you're not getting Apocalypse, and that also means you're not getting the good ending. So like even in my Iron Man where I would like want to turtle, because Iron Mans are, well, actually no. Because I didn't get the good ending in Iron Man, but you know what I mean. Because it's a map you'd ordinarily want to turtle because, oh, so many reinforcements. Ugh. But, oh god, they're gonna surround me, but no, because it's like, okay, but I can avoid their spawn point by going over the spawn zone with Milady, and then I can do this, and then I can warp. So yeah, the rescue, very good addition to this still. And it's just a fun game with fun units to use, because Wrecker is one of the most viable units, and that's like the only time in the series that happens where like the Swordmaster is the good unit, ladies and gents. In New Mystery, you will be using Swordmasters a lot, but that game has pretty liberal reclassing, so I don't know if that really counts. Like, you know, I'm talking about games with like, oh, you get your Swordmaster, and now they're the Swordmaster. You know, I'm talking Mia, I'm talking Navarre, I'm talking Carol, and FE... Well, no, there's Guy in FE7. But yeah, very fun game to play viably, and it just has good map design, ladies and gents. Like, oh, okay, so it's like, oh, I'm on this chapter. I think it's the last one of the Western Isles arc, where it's like, oh, I got this sleep staff, and there's these thin hallways, but I can break walls. Okay, so I split up into teams to have these guys break the walls to kill the sleep staff guy while I try to advance forward, and oh, who's gonna get slept, and oh, I can use Faye in my last deployment slot to have her absorb staff, so you got some fun strategies, but it's like, oh, there are no skills or, like, no perfs or anything. Like, Thracia is just a numbers game. Like these games, why are you putting it up here? Rescuing and the other mechanics it adds, like supports, adds, I'd say, a lot of stuff. Because, you know, oh, usually with supports, you know, you, in regular Binding Blade runs, you would just mash and turn after you're pretty much done seizing a map. But in an efficient run, it's like, okay, I have to position Roy. If I want the support where I want Alan to get a little more evasion, I gotta do this in this many turns. Oh, how many turns can I afford to have Alan next to Roy while still progressing through the map? Because, you know, I lost my train of thought. Oh, because Alan is a mounted unit and he needs to go further than Roy. Ooh, how do I do this? So that's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to watch. Very fun game to just try to use the good units in. Honestly, this, yeah. So Binding Blade, very fun game. Rescue and everything else adds enough over these games where I think it actually transforms it into a really fun experience. Compared to this game, which sucks! Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. Now you're probably thinking, wait, these games have the exact same mechanics. Bro, what are you doing? Bro, what is going on? Now hear me out. One, the map design sucks. So you have so many long and boring route the enemy maps, so that makes it kind of unfun to play, because it's like, oh, you kill this many enemies, and then, oh, no, a million more, just shut up, you're still playing the game. Compared to Fire Emblem 6, where the only victory condition in the entire game is you need to get Roy from point A to point B. And that adds a lot of, you know, that adds a lot of stuff to the game, because, you know, that map where you get eye green, it's like, oh, I can just fly my units to the right here, and then the throne is right there. Oh, but there are then a bunch of archers and units there, and Shauna or Milady may not be able to kill them all on their own, and then what happens when I rescue drop Roy, and I gotta get to Hemern Village on the right. So, you know, and I gotta keep Percival's minions alive, so it's like, you know, so on top of getting Roy's butt to the throne, you know, the maps are pretty well designed. Now, I'm not talking about the guide chapters, ladies and gentlemen, you know, between you and me, if we're talking about the guide chapters, those maps are not the best, but technically, if you're doing super efficiency, where you're just beating the game as fast as possible without caring, you don't have to play those. But, yeah, so, with Fire Emblem 7, the maps just kind of blow. Because it's like, oh, there's so many weak enemies that I could just have Marcus. And again, in terms of healthy Jagans, you know, Marcus is just right. You know, Marcus in Fire Emblem 6, I mean. Because, you know, you get to the Western Isles and he was good, but now he's kind of getting away. He's kind of not being a thing anymore. And it's still a while before you get Milady and Percival, which are the other two good units besides Rickar. So you still have to do, you know, a good amount of training on, like, Shauna and stuff to get her promoted, get her extra move. I'm not saying you, like, have to. Like, I'm sure there are more efficient runs that don't. But, like, you know. But you know what I'm saying, right? Compared to Fire Emblem 7, Marcus Ward's like, oh, just give him the javelin, and for the first billion chapters, boom, kill. Okay, good job. You know, he still does fall off, like, a little bit, but you get so many good mounted units, that it just kind of becomes, I don't know, bro. I don't know. Now, I'm putting it in What in Tarnation, I'm putting it in Meh, instead of What in Tarnation, because actually, the big, long, boring route the enemy maps, it does bring me a small amount of joy to see them be beat quickly. Because, you know, you're watching... I hate Cog of Destiny, dude. That map takes like 2 hours every time. And it's like, oh my god, just stop the count, stop the reinforcements, oh my god. But seeing someone beat it in like 20 minutes and advancing, and okay, trade per skill or this, oh, this is the javelin, oh, I'm effectively using all my characters. That does put a smile on my face, but just watching it still, you know, that is like the 20 minutes you're watching that... that is the 20 minutes you're watching that Kaga Destiny LTC. Compared to like, I don't know, the 5 minutes, or like the 10 minutes you might be watching a Binding Blade LTC, because, well, no, actually still has long maps, but I'd still say they're more interesting because of the mechanics, right? And then Binding Blade just has good map design usually, and the only objective is to get Roy to the throne. But yeah, like, it still has rescue and stuff, but I'd say it's less dynamic and like less interesting in a game like Blazing Blade. They're just like, I don't know, dude, I don't know if I'm a fan of this. Yeah. Yeah, alright. Alright. And then we already talked about Sacred Stones. You get Seth, you beat the game, hooray. The world is saved, hooray. You get other good units, like you get Cormag, and it has the same problem for me that Blazing Blade has. You know, Blazing Blade eventually just becomes like Paladin, Fire Emblem, and it's the same with this. You get Seth, you get Vanessa, you get Cormag, you promote him up, yay, the world was happy. Everyone was at peace. You know, you're generally not using anything that's particularly interesting or rogue. Like, again, with Binding Blade, you're using Rutger. With Thracia, there's plenty of indoor maps, so, you know, the variety is pretty good. Pretty good, I'd say. But then it's just like, you're kind of just, there's not a lot of thought going into this. And this game's pretty easy. You know, I'd say on Hector hard mode, this game's pretty freaking hard on occasions, because the sheer amount of reinforcements and tomfoolery that can happen in a map like the one where he saves the field, that has a lot of potential for high-quality tomfoolery. So, seeing someone just breeze through that, things I find really fucking annoying, that it does put a certain amount of smiles on my face, even though in general I think the game is boring. With Sacred Stones, that game's already easy. So what are you proving by just beating it with Seth? Fuck, that's how I beat it when I play it normally. Oh, you just use units, one round unit, you know, it's not, you know, Sacred Stones, I would say, is not a complex beast. And now we get to Path of Radiance. Again, in my normal tier list, I'd say Path of Radiance is good, a fun game, good story, but if we're analyzing it from the sake of efficiency, it's a pump and dump scheme. You get your bonus EXP on Marisha or Jill. Probably Marisha. Wait, no. What's the one? I think Marisha is the... No, Misha is the one from Thracia. Pink-haired girl. You know who I'm talking about. Makalov's sister. The O Crackers girl. Like, it's essentially a pump and dump scheme. You get all the bonus EXP on the chapters before you get her. Pump and dump. Okay, now you're beating every map in 2 turns. Because in Path of Radiance, the enemies are weak. And there's, you know, kill boss maps. And, you know, the occasional C's. But, actually, wait. Are there kill boss maps? Hold on, I gotta look this up. You know, I'm just gonna say there are kill boss maps. This is objective tier list, so you can just correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, there are some maps where you just gotta do what you gotta do. The kill boss map C's. I forgot when the C's fully transitioned into having maps that are kill boss. But I think, yeah, I'm just gonna say, because all the maps in Thracia that were like kind of kill boss were still C's. Like, you know, even if you, yeah, Thracia had C's maps, Binding Blade had C's maps. Okay, yeah, this definitely had, you know, okay, whatever. There's some route the enemy maps which takes a long time, and it's essentially a pump and dump scheme. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna move it down a tier. You know, Path of Radiance in normal is a very fun, very cool game, but in efficiency, you pump and dump Marisha, or you pump and dump Jill with the EXP. You know, your stocks soar, but then I'd say it becomes pretty autopilot. You know, you look up the Path of Radiance LTC, you watch it, 2 turns, oh, they sent Marisha forward, oh, blah, 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 blah. You know, and I'd say, you know, Radiant Dawn is more interesting, even though I hate this game. This is like my second least favorite Fire Emblem game behind Birthright, right? I hate this game. It's so long. It's so boring. In the late game route the enemy maps, I just cannot abide by this at all. I hate this game when you play it normally. And the story is so trash. But when playing efficiently, there's actually some nuance to it, because it's like, oh, you gotta make choices. You gotta choose, okay, you're splitting your army into 3 parts. Oh, you start the game with units that get one-shot everything. How are you gonna manage that? Oh, you get your bonus EXP, but, you know, you're gonna say, yeah, whatever. Actually, no, you're not gonna save it. It's a pump and dump scheme on Har. The only thing that puts it above Path of Radiance is that there are some sections of the game where you don't have Har. And it's like, oh, Ilyana. You know, I forgot my train of thought. Oh, Ilyana goes to Ike's army eventually. Are you gonna put any, items on her so she can give them to Ike's army? You know, that's cool. That's interesting. Huh. And, you know, yeah, so there's some parts of the game where you don't have Har. So I'd say the shifting unit roster makes it interesting, and I'd say it's more interesting than Radiant Dawn from a viability perspective, because you can unequip skills. You know, I think in Path of Radiance, if you unequipped a skill, it just died forever. But in this, it's like, okay, who needs this skill for this map? Who needs this skill for this map? Who needs this skill for this map? If I'm trying to beat it as best as I can. But still, I would still say it devolves into mindlessness pretty quick. Like, oh, defend this map for 14 turns and Ike's at a fort. Oh, Har's here. Har, what's the dude's name? The white bird guy. You know who I'm talking about. Oh, white bird guy. Not Raphael. Raphael's brother. Satan? Whatever, you know who I'm talking about. Oh, actually, and it's an or kill boss map. Okay, Har, go kill that guy. Oh, it's a big defense map where, oh, I have to defend, and there's so many reinforcements, and my blue-haired guy with the Brave Lance, I'm Valencia, and my blue-haired guy with the Brave Lance comes in soon. Oh, how will I defend until he gets here? Har, go kill that guy on turn 2. Har, kill that guy, Har. So it's still not, you know, the most complex beast in the world, but I'd say it has enough points of interest. Compared to, actually, you know what? Okay, now I feel better about that. It has enough points of interest where I'd say watching a viable run of this is still more interesting, but even then, not really, because, oh, I trained my units. What units am I going to level up? Doesn't matter by the time you get to the tower, because you just get Gifka, and you get Tabarn, and you get Nasai. You get Tabarn before that, and you get and you just get every good beast Lagoo, so it's like, oh, you know, doesn't really matter who you trained in the early game to get ready for the tower, because you're just bringing, like, the same couple of units outside, like, 2, you know? I will allow you, you know, the game says, I will allow you 2 free picks to bring into the tower, outside of Jilhar, all the legendary beasts, Ike, Makai, and so you get 2. Okay. But yeah, Radiant Dawn, it has enough going on where if I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, this is potentially interesting, okay. Compared to Path of Radiance, where it's like, okay, yep, this is certainly a game this is certainly gameplay that I'm watching, where the enemies are just ramming into Marisha, and they're dying, and then Marisha kills the boss. Good game, okay. You know, and you know what? Again, subjective, you know, you could just say I'm ignorant. You could say, you don't know nothing about Path of Radiance viability. I hate you. Actually, it's more complex because on this chapter, you know, I don't have every little detail of the games memorized. Leave a comment if you disagree. Awakening. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, yes. So if you play this game on the hardest difficulty, it's like, oh, all the enemies actually have 2 randomized skills, and how can you prepare for that? You know, it's like, okay, with Thracia, it's like, okay, there's so many interesting planning things going on. Oh my goodness, okay, and I do this. And actually, you know what, that is a bullshit thing to bring up Thracia in comparison, because sometimes enemies have variable stats, and sometimes they have 1 or 2 extra move. Okay, so it's like, okay, let's move on. Let's not talk about Thracia in that instance. Binding Blade, it's like, okay, so this enemy will have this speed threshold on this chapter. So much speed do I gotta get this? Oh, and, you know, with Binding Blade, if you're planning like an efficient run, you can very clearly plot out in your mind's eye what's going to need to happen. With this game, it's like, how can you even do that? Because it's like, oh, 2 random skills each time, and sometimes they're just shit like Vantage Plus, where I kill you first. And it's like, I don't know about that one. And even then, it's just like, oh, it's a Robin solo. Like, I saw the J-Wits beat this game with just Robin in under an hour. like Lunatic, I think, like 10 years ago. You know, and it's like you can't even do anything interesting with it. Because there are the kids, but if you're playing efficiently, all the kids start at low levels, so who cares? Compared to a game we'll be talking about very soon, where they have seals and stuff to help with that. And it's like, so the game on the hardest difficulty in general is bullshit. And then it's not even like you can see people react to the bullshit and be like, okay, maybe I'll make a different strategy for this. Because you'll just, like, use Robin, and if it's 0%, you'll be using Anna with the rescue staff to get your boss killer into range. And the maps aren't very interestingly designed. Like, part of watching a good run is interesting maps. Like, oh, with this game, the ballisticians are spawning in into the defense camp and they're unleashing the prisoners. How are you going to spawn in? And with Awakening, the map design isn't. Ladies and gentlemen, the map design isn't. What do I mean by isn't? I don't think I'm going to elaborate on the point. But, so, it just becomes a whole... It can be kind of interesting to see in motion, but, like, it kind of just is. Like, on 0%, some people have done funny meme runs where it's like 0% Donald gets the final hit on Garmin. It's like, you know, that's fun, but it's like, So it's like you're only using one unit, so that's not very interesting. Like, you know, a Robin paired up with a Crom, and I guess Frederick in the early game, and, like, Anna if you want to do rescuing, but, like, you're still using a very small pool of units. You know, you're not using your entire army to rescue across the stage, and oh, so this person needs to get this objective, and blah, 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 blah. Nope, that's not how it is. And it just is kinda not the best. Not the best. You know, all the people who I've talked to who try to play this game efficiently on Lunatic Plus, they aren't happy. They aren't happy afterwards, ladies and gentlemen. And now we have a good Awakening, because it has all of Awakening's mechanics, but it actually makes good use of them. So efficient runs are very, very fun to see. Like, have you ever seen those Zoran videos where he, you know, plots every single detail of the map, like that one he did like 2 months ago, where he played like Othello's map, where it's like, okay, so my unit survives on 1 HP here because I did this in this chapter, and I got this many support points, and they're like, art. Like, the units you use actually matter, because, you know, you can't just, like, beat Conquest with the unit. That's just not how the game works, you know? It's like, you beat the game with the unit, you beat the game with the unit, you beat the game with the unit. There's some trickery involved here. Like, you gotta use units to, like, push and stuff if you want to be super, super good. And, like, you know, you don't beat this game with a unit, but still not very interesting. Pump and dump scheme for Har, except for the parts where you don't have them, and in those parts you usually have Jill, who's your other pump and dump scheme. And this is just, you know, the Warp Saga, and this is the numbers game, but with this it's like, okay, so if you're trying to do a strategy, and you're trying to make it work, and you're trying to use the good units, and it's like, okay, you know, it's like, okay, so I need this many support points, and I need this skill by this point, okay, and you can actually use the kids, so that's another thing to plan out. It's like, okay, because kids, unlike Awakening, you can just snap your fingers, okay, now they're at the current level of your party, so it's like, okay, to get this kid, I need to, get, you know, this parent, and the parent needs to spend, like, 5 levels in this. Like, I had a Valora in one of my runs, with, like, Heartseeker to decrease evasion, but she was on a flyer because her mother was Camilla, and it was such a good unit. And that gave her Swordbreaker because Camilla was her mom, so then she soloed that, so she got access to the class that gets that, and she soloed that whole room of heroes, which let me beat that in Yago's chapter, which let me beat that map very quickly. So, like, plotting out your strategy and watching it play out to decimate otherwise very hard maps in, like, a second, or, like, you know, very efficiently. Like, the more you play Conquest, the more you learn, and the more, okay, so this unit can do this unit can do this, oh my god, I'm learning, okay, I can do this many support points in this chapter, and it's dynamic, it's fun, you're using a lot of units, there's a lot of possibilities, you know, there's a lot of possibilities. You know, yeah, there is obviously the most viable thing, right, where it's like, oh, Xander, you pair him up with Charlotte, and now he's a Wyvern or whatever, and oh boy, now you're winning. But still, it requires a lot of thought, it requires a lot of heart, it requires a lot of effort. And there are enough room for alternative strategies. You know, the good units can be used in different ways, you know, like, say, you know, you're using Marcus. Marcus is Marcus, right? You know, Camilla, you know, you're playing efficiently, you're using the best units, obviously you're deploying to kill her, you can use her as a Wyvern Lord, or you can reclass her into a sorcerer, and then she can use Nosferatu, so now she has all of her great bulk, and she just never ever dies, not once in the whole game, and she gets Bowbreaker, right? So, you know, flyers are weak to arrows. Oh, maybe spend some time in sorcerer and you get Bowbreaker. You know, not everyone does that. Might not be the most efficient thing, but maybe you just do it for a chapter where, like, oh, you don't need a flyer, you know, because there are some maps where being a flyer doesn't help that much in the grand scheme of things, even though there are many that are, like Fuga's Wild Ride. But, you know, maybe you don't need a flower. So, oh, okay, so what unit am I going to be this? Okay, I need Odin. I need Odin to pass advantage onto Ofella. Okay. So I'll have him be a samurai for this chapter, even though he's usually better as a sorcerer. Okay. So what maps can I go without? What maps can I still get him easy levels in? It's so complex and has so many layers, and it's so good. However, ladies and gentlemen, however, one of the most viable units in the game is Xander. And Xander is a raging sexist, ladies and gentlemen. I know. He only hired Perry because she was sexy, not because of her other talents, ladies and gentlemen, because she was sexy. And you know what most viable players do, ladies and gentlemen? Or a lot of viable players do? They just use Charlotte, a strong, independent woman, and they just use her as a parrot bot for the sexist and evil Xander. So for that, for having a unit that would only hire Perry because she is sexy, and being sexist, Xander, you have brought this game's viability ranking down. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Yep, okay. And then we have Echo Shadows of Valentia. Now, this game, now you might say, you know, oh, you know, this game is so... I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words, but you know, I have seen people go insane over this game. Like, you know, I'd say this game for the most part is pretty figured out, but there's something about the Shadows of Valentia meta that makes people go insane. Like, there's this Twitter user called Shine Lily a while ago, and they would just play a lot of Shadows of Valentia, and they would figure things out. Like, if you give Bowie like one extra defense potion, you can beat this map like one turn sooner, and it's like 5 chapters in the future, and it's like, it's fun. You know, you got your bows, so that's fun there. You know, you can obviously promote units to different things, but if you're, you know, doing the most viable option, you know, you're always gonna have Faye be the cleric and whatnot. But there's just something interesting about it, seeing people go insane over the most minute differences, because the minute differences matter, right, in Shadows of Valentia, in Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia. You know, in Shadow Dragon, you know, let's compare it to Shadow Dragon. You know, it doesn't really matter to a certain extent, right? Because you forge up your Wing Spear, you forge up your Rider's Bane. You know, it doesn't really matter if Midia gets doubled, because you can just use the Rider's Bane, so who cares? You know, in Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, if you pump and dump Har, usually it's going to work out. In this game, it's like, okay, so you get doubled or not based on 1 speed. So, you know, certain thresholds in this game are very important. So it's like seeing people break their mind and like trying to figure out, okay, I can shave 1 turn. I can shave 1 turn off of the run if I give May 1 extra attack fountain, or if I give Est 1 extra defense fountain. So it's like, I'd say, you know, so even though Shadows of Valentia, you know, it's basic, you know, you can only hold 1 item. There are some combat arts, you know, you can, and, you know, items, you know, who holds the item, who gets the combat art, oh, swap, someone needs to hold the leather shield for that. And the incredibly minute, 1 stat point differences, 1 I think make this game very interesting, because, like, 1 level up, you know, I've talked about 0% in this a bit, but it's not, like, the only thing I'm talking about. So, like, if you're just playing an efficient run and you're trying to beat it as fast as possible, just a stat change of 1 can open up, like, a new possibility or completely screw you. So I think it's very interesting to watch from that aspect. You know, I assume most people just rig the level ups, right? Because, you know, if you're playing efficiently, that's just something, your RNG you're not going to want to deal with. But, you know what I mean. So even though the maps, you know, like Awakening, the maps isn't, but just, it has, like, you're still using a lot of units, you know, it's just not, you know, the Robin show, right? And, you know, the minute differences, I think, make a difference. Okay, so if I'm watching two different players, so it's like, okay, why did you give the stat fountain to this guy? Okay, so you gave the stat fountain to this guy, and I see people have debates about this. Like, it's very interesting. And that Twitter user, Schneidley, they got very insane over this meta for a while, after a while, to completely figure it out. So I think, like, the minuscule differences truly make the Shadows of Valentia meta interesting. And, you know, again, this is a different from my usual tier list, because I would never rate Shadows of Valentia, you know, above, like, you know, Shadow Dragon. Because, you know, when I play it, when I'm just playing it normally, it's like, you know, I don't care about, like, the one stat difference, and it's like, the maps are just kind of lame. But an efficient player has a very interesting operation with this game, and I think that's interesting to observe, personally. And now we have probably the biggest departure. Oh, it's going above meh. Oh, it's going above this. Oh. Now let me explain, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain. Fire Emblem Three Houses, when you're just playing it, I would say the interestingness of it is quite uninteresting. Because you get Stride, you get Warp, you win the game, blah blah blah. Because you can grind, and you can New Game Plus, and you can blah blah blah, get this, get that. When you're watching someone play the game efficiently, and, you know, doing all the paralogs and stuff, it becomes a whole different thing. You know, you're not grinding, you're not doing much. You know, you're just playing the game, and that is when it becomes interesting. You know, you're not New Game Plusing, so it becomes a very interesting thing, because when you start out, oh, you only have the couple of Professor points. So it's like, oh, actually, I forgot. Do LTCs of this game just grind Professor? I don't know. I forgot the process of grinding Professor points right away. I think you can fish and get them, but there might be a cap on that. So, oh, I only have 3 units. I only have 3 units I can train. Oh, who do I get this? Oh, I gotta get Dimitri this specific amount of lance rank, so I can lock this specific combat art. Oh, I gotta get Lysithea to warp before this. Oh, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. And because there's so many bars in the game, you know, like bars, oh, I need this weapon rank, I need this authority rank, I need this, I need this, I need this. That watching an efficient run of this game just straight up, you know, new game, very, very interesting, because the thresholds they need to meet. Okay, so I'll plant this yellow flower, because Dimitri needs this 1 extra speed. And, you know, the good units are fun to use. The viable units, you know, it's not just boring, because, you know, Edelgard has Gale Force. Dimitri, depending on what route you do, has that move that's effective on everything. Claude can set up evasions for himself, so you can have him advance forward without much risk. Lysithea, probably one of my favorite things of all time. One of the most viable units in that game, because she gets Warp very soon, high magic. So the fun units are hard to do, are fun to use. And it's very, you know, it's a very interesting game to see played at a high level, I'd say, very fun. Because there's so many meters in the game, and so you need your weapon rank, and then you need your class skill, and then you get that experience gem, so like, oh, I need this rank for this specific thing to get this skill. Okay, so now I'm playing this map quickly, but I'm gonna LTC it. So okay, Dimitri kills this guy, set up a trade chain. Okay, now Felix is holding the weapon experience gem. So there's so much going on at this game where, you know, if you're just playing it usually, you're grinding, you're skipping, you're doing all that. And there's still definitely skipping on efficient, but that's the same for Thracia. There's so much detail and things going on. It's the same reason I like Shadows of Valentia, where it's like the 1 point difference makes or breaks you, right? And this, it's like, okay, so, like, in a Blue Lions LTC I was watching, you know, there was minuscule, okay, Dimitri needs exactly this much lance rank for this point in the game, because I cannot train him for a lot. So, okay, how do I get this before the time skip? Okay, how do I get this before the time skip? This unit needs this class rank, because to kill the, boss in the Yanni and Fernand's chapter, I need to use the triangle attack, so I gotta get 3 units to use the triangle attack. And I gotta get this to get this certification. So, like, Fire Emblem Three Houses transforms from a game where I think, where you're just playing it normally, it's kind of less fun than, you know, your Binding Blades, your Thracias, your Conquests. When you're watching it in motion and seeing someone play it, the amount of detail, the amount of minuscule detail that goes into, like, 100% efficient run, because the one I watched was, like, they recruited all the units, and they got all the paralogs, because, it was a 100% efficient run. So it's like, okay, I need Byleth to get this weapon rank, so they could recruit this unit, and now this, and now this, and now this, and there's so many layers to it. An efficient Three Houses run has so many layers to it that it's really, really interesting to see. And there are 3 different routes, You start with a different roster, okay? So now my Byleth needs different weapon ranks to recruit different units in a different order, and it's like, ooh, that's neat. Still, I'd still say there's a very select pool of good units that you're using, right? Like, make no mistake, right? Like, you're deploying Lysithia, you're deploying the good units, ladies and gentlemen, It's not like Thracia, where occasionally, sometimes you have to switch it up. But, it's interesting. It's really interesting how much thought and care can go into a good Three Houses run. It's really, really interesting. And that's what I think makes a good, efficient game. With Awakening, it's not interesting. It's not. Because the units are annoying, and you just drop in with this. It's not interesting. You just kill the enemies with baby stats compared to your Seth Big Boy stats. This is pretty much autopilot. With Three Houses, it's like, okay, because on Maddening, the enemies are completely stat cracked. So, getting past them is a ordeal and a half, trust me. Because I've beaten it on Maddening, and... So seeing the amount of thought and care goes into very specific encounters in Three Houses, very interesting. Compared to Thracia, where, you don't really have to think about how much you train your units outside of, like, getting staff rank for, like, Safi or something without worrying about Fatigue or Binding Blade, where, they're pretty much just going to turn out the same, depending on RNG variances. But with this, thought, care, interest. A good, efficient game is interesting when played at the efficient level. And I think Three Houses is the most interesting in that regard, for me personally. Compared to, like, my normal tier list, where I think Three Houses is okay. It'd be like, okay, here. So, and then, so there's a case where Viability makes the game more fun, this game, and then a case where Viability makes the game less fun, this game, because you're just using Sigurd and you're not even doing the fun breeding mechanics, to their fullest extent of the fun they can be if you're just playing normally. And then we have Fire Emblem Engage, which I think is fine. You have the ring system, and the meta units are fun to use. Panet with that Wrath Vantage setup, that's a very fun thing to do. With Ike, but I'd feel like, you kind of get the ring with the Micaiah, and then you can warp skip a lot of it, which is fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to do. And the map and some of the maps are interesting to see played out, but I wouldn't say, like, there's enough interest going on. Like, you can technically do skills, inheritance, even though you need a lot of SP to do that. You can swap rings around for certain instances. Like, I think it's good. It's fun to play viably. It's fun to use the viable units. But I feel like the units themselves are kind of generic, because it's like, Chloe's good. And, you can give a fast unit the Lin Ring, and actually, I don't have too much experience with, like, Viability Engage. Like, I've watched some stuff, but I will say, actually, the reason I put in good Viability is seeing people use all the powers they have to clear a run good. Like, watching that one turn, like, watching people clear such insane maps with all the mechanics the game gives you. Like, again, Three Houses, Nemesis, one turn. Nemesis is very hard to kill in one turn. But if you do, like, these specific things with Claude, and you use Fallen Star and the Dance of the God... I don't think you get Dance of the Goddess in Golden Deer, so never mind on that. But if you do all these specific things, all these rescue strats, and lower shield a bit first, okay, you can have Lysithia one-shot him. It's super interesting to people who utilize the mechanics of all the games to achieve a truly interesting result. Same with Thracia, that final chapter with Veld. If you want to beat that fast, you gotta kill like 8 bosses, so people use the rewarp staff, the dancer. You're combining all the interesting mechanics of the game to do a truly efficient strategy. That is interesting. And, I feel like Engage allows for similar things, really. Because, you can kill Sombra on one turn by lowering his shield, so, you gotta use the staff for this, I gotta use this for that, I gotta use the Emblem Ring for this. So there's a lot of different uses of powers and whatnot. Different interesting mechanics, but you don't really have to put too much thought into the units themselves, right? It's like there's no weapon ranks. All you have to do to reclass them is just buy their weapon, buy their engaged bond with Renown. Compared to Conquest, where there are a lot of interesting mechanics and things to take use of, and you actually have to put thought and character units, and it's interesting to see played at a high level, because it's like, oh, you gotta get this supports this fast, but this is just like, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to use all the powers and see them used efficiently, use them efficiently yourself, like Wrath, Vantage, Pinhead, just killing all the enemies, that's really fun. Pinhead's probably like the best unit in that game, and it's a good best unit to have, because she's fun to use. But I wouldn't say there's too much pure thought going into how you're training your units compared to other games which offer also skill things. It's like, oh, with 3 houses, I need this bar for this thing, and I need this, and I need this, and I need that. With Engage, you could just buy it with bond fragments. It's not very interesting in comparison. So I'm putting it above like Shadow Dragon and stuff because it's not just a numbers game. There are skills you can get. There are fun things to do, fun powers. It's good. It's good fun. It's just not as interesting as I'd say the top tiers, because it's like, with no weapon ranks, and you kind of rely on the emblem rings a bit, the units themselves become kind of lost in the sauce a bit. Like, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some units that are, like, the best ring holders. But yeah, and you're not really mixing it up too much, because you don't need to reclass to get a specific skill like in Conquest. Like, once a unit is in the class that they're good in, you're probably going to keep them in there, unless there's a specific map where they might be better and different. But you don't really, Yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like, by me talking about it, you'd probably think I'm saying meh, because I'm saying a lot, but I still think it has a lot more going on than, like, Shadow Dragon or Blazing Sword, to put it in good viability. You know, you can plot out really cool runs of this game, I'd say. You can plot out cool runs, and it's, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's got more going on than Echoes, but, like, it's fun to watch. Like, Echoes, those minute details are really interesting to me, and I feel like Engage has less of those. But, like, Engage has enough customization and stuff. But you don't really have to put any effort into customization. Part of the fun with Conquest is that you have to get the support points before a certain time, so you can get the unit before this, this, and this. And, I mean, Engage, yeah. I mean, this is tricky, actually. I'm not sure how I feel about Engage. You know what? Just say it's tied with Echoes. Like, it has stuff going on, but it's good. It's fine. It's fine. More interesting to watch than, like, Mystery of the Emblem. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is my Fire Emblem Viability tier list. The games that are best at viability. Fire Emblem 3 Houses, for its intricacy in high-level runs. Very interesting. Fire Emblem Facia 776, again, the amount of thought and care you can put into a run in this game is insane. Binding Blade, also very fun, lots of fun mechanics, lots of stuff to manage. Conquest, it'd be up here if Xander were not a raging sexist. And if Xander did not impact the viability of the game, it'd be up here, but unfortunately he is a very viable unit. What a raging sexist. Engage, it has enough going on, but it's nothing compared to these games. Echoes, yeah, it's kind of generic, you know, the maps aren't fun, you know, you're not seeing, like, crazy, you know, sometimes you can see these crazy strategies, but not, like, you're not seeing them, like, a bunch, but the minute differences in, like, ones make it interesting. Warp, well, number game, not too much going on compared to these. Number game, pump and dump scheme, you just suck in general. You're good, usually, but, played normally, you're just kind of okay. Again, if you're doing a rank run up here, if you're not down here, this, game's, I mean, it's fine. And then, no, it's not fine, actually. And then, there's Awakening. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the viability tier list. And again, for the IDK tier, I don't care to, and I'm never going to I don't care to try it myself with Birthright and Revelation, and I don't think I'm going to watch it anytime soon. If you're experts on those games, let me know what the viability scene is like. How fun is it for you? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you next time. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you see. Bye-bye, and don't forget to comment what you think.